All right.
And welcome to 30-Minute War. We are live across multiple platforms. We are currently live on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. So, welcome to the 30-Minute War, including the dog. Hello, dog.
That's Gizmo.
And
Gizmo may make a few appearances on 30-Minute War from time to time.
and yeah, hope y'all enjoy the show. We're about to talk some Ohio State and Michigan football, and let's get into this.
Woo!
So definitely you've got you guys talking about some fall camp battles here. I mean, I'm sure that you're looking at the Big Ten, there's a lot of teams that have some interesting fall camp battles, but none other than Michigan and Ohio State, because they're usually the two best teams in the Big Ten, as they've been the last 10 years for the very least. So I guess you guys just go into it, don't go too crazy or whatever, but Michigan, Ohio State's a heated rivalry, but still definitely can talk some fall camp battles. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Jeffrey. Obviously, we've been looking at fall camp the last couple of weeks on Michigan Wolverines Live, which is the show I host every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Voice of College Football. So we've been looking at it. My debate partner has a lot more to say on this topic, because we really only have cornerback number 2 and wide receiver in the slot as the two starting positions that are like the big question marks right now. But cornerback number 2 has been a battle in fall camp. My prediction is that Josh Wallace, who came in here from UMass, might actually be the winner in week 1. I think that with 140 tackles at UMass, 28 pass breakups. He had a 71.2 coverage grade from Pro Football Focus. That blows pretty much everybody else on the list out of the water. So I think that for game 1, unless someone else just crushes it in fall camp, McBurrows maybe. Amarian Walker's injured, so I think he's out, at least for game 1. So I think you're looking at Josh Wallace from the Fighting Don Browns as your cornerback number 2, which I think that next to Will Johnson, who really emerged last year, I think that that'll be a solid choice against the East Carolina Pirates. You also have wide receiver 3, so I think it's a pretty foregone conclusion to almost anybody who's watching this that Cornelius Johnson and Roman Wilson are going to be the starting X and Z receivers. I think it's just that's just how it's going to be. But the slot receiver is still up for debate, and so you've got really 2 choices here: Tyler Morris and Darius Clemens. Yes, there's Peyton O'Leary. Yes, there's Frederick Moore. There are others, but Tyler Morris played with J.J. McCarthy in high school. They called each other Mufasa and Simba. Okay, they are tight. And so Tyler Morris in the slot position is very possible. But Darius Clemens has had moments, especially in the spring game, not this year, but last year, that he looked really good. He didn't see a ton of targets, just 2 as a true freshman. I think that Morris personally, and some disagree. Sports Illustrated disagrees with me here. And even some people who I've talked to who are Michigan insiders. I just think that based on their history, that Tyler Morris will get the start. But even if Clemens does, I think they're pretty solid in that position. Running back 3, the other one I'll mention, there's a lot, but those are the kind of 3 key ones, because those are the ones that you're going to be seeing the most, I think. You've got here, CJ Stokes, Khalil Mullings, Cole Cabana, but Ben Hall really did separate himself in the spring game and led the team. He had 96 rushing yards in the spring game. He was compared to another guy you guys might remember, Hassan Haskins, who Mike Hart, if Mike Hart is comparing you to Hassan Haskins, that's pretty high praise. I think that you're going to see him win the job for running back 3. You're going to see CJ Stokes is going to be the warm body that if nobody else is available, CJ Stokes can be the warm body at running back. Cole Cabana maybe the backup to the backup to the backup. And Khalil Mullings is going to be that hammering panda, get 1 yard. Maybe he might throw the football again because that was fun. And so I'd say those are the 3 kind of key positions that you're gonna see in the first couple of weeks. And those battles, knowing Harbaugh, could go in to the game, like game 1, 2, and 3. There are some others like center, but I think center is pretty solidified with the Stanford transfer. And so those are the 3 that I think are still kind of up in the air.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely looks like Michigan has a lot of depth, which is always good if you're wanting to be able to be a championship level team. Competition always makes players better, and it looks like Michigan is in great shape. Like you said as well, K. McNamara, J.J. McCarthy went to the season last year, so definitely Jim Harbaugh likes to have competition go into the season, which is really smart for sure. So you got for Buckeye Mike and the Ohio State Buckeyes, what fall camp battles are you looking at for the Buckeyes on defense and on offense? And do you feel like that there's going to be a lot of depth all around for the Buckeyes this year?
So for me, the biggest one that I think everyone's paying attention to or trying to is definitely the quarterback position. I think based on the fact that Marvin Harrison and Kyle McCord went to high school together, they also have the same kind of connection, so to speak. I think that does help give McCord an edge for sure. And I think that McCord eventually will win the starting job. It's just a matter of how long will he keep it, because I do think that there is the big possibility of him losing it eventually. And then I know there's a big question on the offensive line. And so there have recently been changes because originally it started with Josh Fryer, Josh Simmons, Tegra Shabola, and freshman Luke Montgomery. And then last Friday, the first team line consisted of Donovan Jackson, Matt Jones, and Carson Heinzman on the interior, with Simmons on the left tackle and Fryer on the right tackle. So that tells me that Fryer, the transfer from San Diego State, came in and basically just took over with impressing the coaching staff. And so he's already getting first team reps. And yes, in my personal opinion, I do think Brown should win the job, but there's just too much leaning in Kyle McCord's favor. The fact that he did play last year, the year before, 1 game, and the whole, like I said, the connection with Marvin Harrison help him in his favor in a sense. Yeah. Am I missing any?
I mean, it sounds pretty good to me. I mean,
Yeah,
Kyle McCord's the big one. I mean, I think that he will start, though. Like, basically, everyone's saying that even in the chat. I mean, he's going to probably start because of the fact he's got the more experience. But that definitely does not mean that your job is safe. You have to keep improving as much as possible, because look at K. McNamara. He eventually lost the job at Michigan. The same thing happened to Kyle McCord at Ohio State for sure.
Yeah, and you can't take. I mean, I know that like Menace to Sports was saying that Devin Brown's going to be the starter because he's been hearing things. But I think that the conventional wisdom here, if you go back to recruiting and you go back to the fact that they chose McCord over J.J. McCarthy in the recruiting battle, they went with him in terms of favoring his recruitment. I think it would take a lot for Brown to get the job snap 1, game 1. But especially because he missed spring. But as I've said on the other Buckeye Mike show, I think that your route to potentially beating Michigan is losing to Notre Dame, benching Kyle McCord, bringing in Devin Brown, and he just lights it up, and then the defenses just don't know what to do because they have to either factor in his running ability, the pass, read option comes into play then. So I think all of that's possible there.
Yeah, I think most likely it sounds like it's going to be like McCord gets Indiana, Brown gets Youngstown State. They both split Western Kentucky, and then your de facto starter will get Notre Dame.
I mean, the thing is that would be bad on whoever has to play against Indiana, because I think Indiana's a little tougher than Youngstown State.
I think you might be right, Jeffrey.
Give him a little credit.
I'll give you a little. I mean, I think that's a true statement.
So I guess if you guys finish with the fall camp battles.
Yep.
So
sounds good. So I guess the next topic for both of you guys is best running back in the Big Ten. Now, I mean, obviously got Henderson or Corum on here. I think there's some other really good running backs in the league as well, but definitely Henderson and Corum are at the top for sure. Buckeye Mike, what are your thoughts on both? Corum might even ask the dog as well what he thinks about this, running back battle if he wants to answer. But for Buckeye Mike, you think Henderson or Corum is the best running back in the Big Ten?
Well, and I think John can attest to this. There's really two ways to answer this. Okay, because from a biased standpoint, of course, I'm going to say Travion Henderson, of course. But you know what? If you ask me and you look at both of their stories, everything they've gone through, both have missed time due to injury. Both had breakout years in 2021. Both are just overall great people. Yeah, Henderson missed a lot more time than Corum. But if you ask me, it's a toss-up when it comes down to it. It's a toss-up because, I mean, where is – okay. So if you take Travion's healthy year in 2021, he had 183 carries, 1,248 yards, averaged 6.8 a carry, 15 touchdowns. His longest run was 68 yards. He had 27 catches, 312 yards, averaged 11.6 yards per catch, and 4 receiving touchdowns. And if you look at Blake Corum's best year, which I would actually say is last year, even though he still missed 3 games, he played enough. I would argue that was his best year. He had 247 carries for 1,463 yards, averaging 5.9 yards, 18 touchdowns. The longest one was 61, 11 catches for 80 yards, averaging 7.3 yards and 1 touchdown. The longest reception for him was 41 yards. So if you look overall, they're both almost equal. Mm-hmm. So I think it really comes down to which fandom are you in the long run? Because, to Jason's point, it comes down to which way are you biased? Because if you look at the stats, like I said, they're down the middle. They're equal almost. But personally, I like Corum and I like Henderson. Due to my reputation as an Ohio State fan, I have to say Henderson is the better back. But it's really 1A, 1B when it comes down to it.
Now, I think, to be fair to Henderson, I could be completely wrong. Correct me if I am, because you guys are the experts here on these two teams. But was Henderson a true freshman when he had the 1,200-yard season?
2020. Yes.
That actually, I mean, you would, in a fair argument, would almost lean Henderson if he's completely healthy and never has any injuries. I mean, that's impressive to do that as a true freshman. Whereas with Corum, he was older when he did, had the season he had. But I mean, I think both are fantastic. But again, no one wants to hear what I have to say about it. What does One Scoop John's opinion of this debate, this question, best running back in the Big Ten, Henderson or Corum?
Okay. As Skip Bayless says, it's my turn. Here we go. So I believe that Henderson, if he was put on the Michigan running back room, would be the third string running back. I think you've got Blake Corum as the best rushing running back. You've got Donovan Edwards with his receiving ability, one of the best receiving running backs in the Big Ten. And I knew you were going to go to the stats here. And the stats are, I give you that the 2021 season where he wasn't injured, TreVeyon Henderson had a great statistical freshman season. If you're going to use freshman stats and say that because he was a freshman, he did, he was amazing. I mean, remember this. Hassan Haskins was running back one for a large portion of Michigan's season that year. You may remember there was a game where he ran for 5 touchdowns. So Blake Corum, he emerged in pockets in that season. But in 2022, Blake Corum statistically was ahead of the Heisman running back winners until he got injured. He was ahead of Derrick Henry, he was ahead of Mark Ingram, and he was ahead of Reggie Bush, the last 3 running back Heisman winners. Then he gets injured against Illinois. I was there. And the balloon deflation that people felt because of just how much of an impact player he is. And I think that that's a key piece that you need to remember when you're thinking of best running back is that what asset is this player to the team? So the thing with TreVeyon Henderson is he is a part of an ensemble. You have every year multiple first round draft pick wide receivers. CJ Stroud, you've been blessed by having CJ Stroud. Before that, you had Justin Fields. Before that, you had Hassan Haskins. All three, Hassan Haskins, Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace. All three played in the NFL. And Justin Fields, actually, I think he looked pretty decent in the preseason the other day, even in the NFL. So listen, I think you've got to just factor that in. Ohio State is a machine. They have favored the pass game. When you favor the pass game, someone like TreVeyon Henderson, when he's fully healthy, yeah, he's gonna have a lot of yards. But it's if he goes down, you have other you can survive on a backup running back. Whether it's a Mayan Williams, a Chip Tranum, who was himself, by the way, really good against Michigan, I thought at times in that game. So when Blake Corum went down, everybody's heart sank. Balloon deflation happening all over the big house that day. So between that, like I said, in terms of trending above the running back Heisman winners, Jason points out in the chat that he probably would have wound up with 23 to 25 touchdowns. So and I think that's very true. If he had continued through to the playoff games, the way that he was trending towards the season, his 2022 was 1,463 rushing yards. He's not a big receiving running back compared to Edwards. So I think that with all things considered, Blake Corum, in terms of his impact to the team and even the stats, since he was cut short in his best season. I think you've got to give it to Corum, not just best running back in the Big Ten, but I think this season he's the best running back in college football, period. When you look at the fact that Ibrahim is gone, Bijan Robinson is gone. I put Braylon Allen up there, and I put Donovan Edwards on a receiving end up there, but Blake Corum, I think, is the best running back in college football.
I've actually would have to agree. I mean, if to throw a little 2 cents there, I think Blake Corum is the best running back in the Big Ten. Henderson's fantastic. I mean, his talent is elite. And like John said, Ohio State is a machine every single year. I mean, the players they get, it's just the talent is there. But Corum all around and what he's done so far and what he was going to be able to do in that season last year if he wasn't hurt, I think that he definitely is number one. I wouldn't say it's by, a massive amount, but it is fairly substantial. He is an elite running back, and it did hurt that he went down last season for sure. I mean, I think it's interesting. You brought up how there were other really solid running backs last year, like Bijan Robinson, guys like that. But I still feel like Blake Corum was best for sure. I really do. I think that he was, by far. Bijan Robinson's fantastic. I mean, he was really, really good last year for Texas. But I do think Corum was definitely having the best season. So it's going to be interesting to see how they both perform, but I definitely think Corum is going to be ahead. Are you guys done on this topic? Is there any other running backs you'd like to mention like you mentioned Braylon Allen? John, what other running backs in the Big Ten do you guys think are possibly, close to being toward the top of the Big Ten, especially you, Mike, because you didn't say anything about that?
I mean, I don't know as far as other ones in the conference. The only thing I will say is that like I said, I like Corum. From a college football fan standpoint, they're 1A and 1B to me. They're ultimately, one could be 1A one week and the other one could be 1A the next week. It's flippy-floppy for me from a league fan perspective. Yeah, Ohio State is a factory. Sometimes that's good in the sense of like we're constantly not having to rebuild and we have depth all the time. But I think, it also hinders things because, for example, look at Williams when Williams left Ohio State's receiving room and went to Alabama. I didn't even know Williams was on Ohio State. And then I turn on an Alabama game. He said, oh, yeah, he transferred to Alabama from Ohio State. And then, boom, he just goes off. And he's freaking awesome. So, yeah, I mean,
that is the exact example of why the transfer portal is good, is to have examples like that. I mean, having a player that is not getting playing time that truly deserves it, like Jameson Williams, because he burst out on the scene for Alabama. I mean, Ohio State definitely could have used him for sure.
Now, the only thing I will say on sort of this topic is do not be surprised, any of us or anyone watching, if your Heisman finalists consist of Caleb Williams, Blake Corum, Travion Henderson, or somebody from Ohio State, and the other one from Michigan, Donovan Edwards. Sorry, the name was escaping me for a second.
The other one.
Yes,
it's gonna be crazy if the Heisman list is gonna have all those running backs. That would be crazy.
I promise it's not a shot.
Marvin Harrison Jr. I think is already almost a lock. And I would say when you think of who's going to be first overall, second overall pick, I would put Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. 1-2 right now. This could change. I mean, we have a whole season to play, but his ability, and you even saw it in the Michigan game. That first half, and even into the beginning of the second half, he had he just was making catches that were just ridiculous. He, in the tradition of Olave, Wilson, the year before, and of course Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think that he is an impact player, and he will probably be in the Heisman list. The danger with Corum and Edwards is that they're going to be splitting so much production. And I don't think Corum will be used heavily in the early games at all, because I think Harbaugh wanted him to go to the NFL. Harbaugh literally gave him the advice of go play on Sundays, make your money. You'll probably be a starter in the NFL right away. He gave him the advice to go. Blake Corum decided to come back and try to help Michigan win a national title this year, which all credit to him. But, he very well could have been starting on Sundays. So,
yeah, I definitely agree with that.
so he's going to be really reserved for Penn State, Ohio State, probably Michigan State too, because I think they want to really run up that score on Michigan State this year. And then if we're lucky enough to get to the Big Ten championship, and beyond. So for those reasons, I put JJ McCarthy as the potential Heisman pick from Michigan, because he's the Heisman has become more of a quarterback award.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And given the fact that Corum Edwards will split a lot of the production, and Ben Hall, you're also going to see, I think, have more production than you're expecting. So it could be a 3-way split, and therefore I think JJ's in the position where, because he'll be the starting quarterback, if he lights it up this season, that he might be the one representing Michigan in New York.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember watching an episode of Late Kick. Shout out Josh Pate. Go watch Josh Pate. He said that the only thing that hinders JJ from the Heisman is the scheme and the style of play that Michigan runs. And I kind of tend to agree with him. That's not a shot. I mean, Michigan, to me, I would agree, is more of a run-first offense. And so I do think that if you run first, you're kind of, in a way, if that would be his goal, you're kind of hindering the quarterback from being able to win the Heisman. Because look at Caleb Williams. It was pass. But you also had
him running a lot.
Aware of his running ability. And I mean, JJ McCarthy is a smaller version of Caleb Williams in a sense, because he can run if he needs to. He can run.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean,
he's really good. Caleb Williams is definitely, the athleticism is off the charts. But yes, JJ McCarthy is, capable as well.
He's the so I'd say Caleb Williams has to be the favorite to repeat for the Heisman for the first time in 3 or 4 decades. He's just so good, and he's his stats last year were superhuman, and he immediately elevates the team to the point where they might have been an 8-win team, and he elevates them to an 11-win team year one. What I would push back on is that from all the reports that I'm seeing, passing has been a huge emphasis of fall camp these last few weeks. Especially, Zach Zinner talked about it. It's something that they've been really focused on. Jim Harbaugh himself, in an interview recently, said, last year we did 60-40 run. This year we're going to do 50-50. Kind of a more balanced offense. And they kind of have to. Because if they want to ease the load on Blake Corum a little, and they want to showcase good quarterback play, because remember, we're trying to get the number 1 recruit in 2025, Underwood, the number 1 quarterback, number 1 recruit. So they have to showcase their passing in order to nail somebody like that. You can't just pound the rock 200 times a game and expect to get the best quarterback in the 2025 class.
Yeah, definitely. We went way off the best running back in the Big Ten top. Hey, Heisman talk is interesting for sure. I mean, Drake May, if he has a great season in North Carolina and they, have a great year, he could be a Heisman candidate. There's a lot of guys that could be, but definitely Ohio State and Michigan are going to have some Heisman candidates. But to John's point, they definitely could split, the stats and not be able to get, that goal of winning the Heisman. It's going to be really interesting for sure. Another topic we have for both John and Buckeye Mike is the trap games for Michigan and Ohio State. Now, I'm sure there's not going to be, that many, especially for Michigan, possibly a little bit more for Ohio State, but still, I think that both teams, you have a good feeling what these trap games are. But I guess you would say for John to go first, as Mike went first last time, what are the trap games that you think for Michigan?
Yeah.
So, before you go real quick, because
yes, we have a message. Yes.
We have a special message from our sponsor. So please enjoy, and don't forget the link is below in the description.
In a world full of fakes, how do you avoid buying fake items that look just like the real thing?
Are you getting faked over? Experts say it's all in the details.
Yeah, I did not know the ad break was coming. Sorry about that.
You're good. You're good. Again, thank you to eBay for being our current sponsor. Please go and check out the eBay link, as we are finally, even though we are much, much smaller, almost equal to Mark, because we have a link for online shopping.
Oh yeah, there you go. You know, you got to dream big, right?
Mark's the guy. That's a high bar.
And eBay is a fine quality website and marketplace for goods and services. So there you go. Okay, so trap game. So I look at this in two ways. Of course, your traditional trap game definition of a game that you don't expect to be tough and is. And it's tough to really define that because Michigan's schedule is, let's be honest, pretty easy, except for Penn State and Ohio State. However, I see two potential candidates here in this first season. One is Minnesota. Minnesota, is one of those games that's played at a point in the season where they're going there. While they are replacing a lot of pieces on offense, their defense is actually, I would argue, better than people think it is. When I did the simulation of this game, it came down to one possession at the end of the game. So I literally had to put the starters back in because I had the backups in, and Minnesota just started racking up points, and I had to bring the starters back in to win the game in the end. So I think PJ Fleck, he's a great coach. He's going to coach them up every single time. And, Michigan always has these games, like one or two a year, where they just keep it closer than they should. Illinois coming down to the last play of the game. Jake Moody, shout out. But so I could see Minnesota being a problem. I could see Maryland, who Jason, I believe, pointed out in the chat, or Mike Fort, that Maryland, Maryland, it's tough for me to call that a trap game because Maryland, I think, is considered a pretty good team now. Mm-hmm. I have them going 9-3. They
replaced Indiana from being good a couple years ago. Just if
they are.
Maybe Maryland will be consistently good, actually, though.
They are in the Indiana position of keeping things closer than they should be. The 2022 game was a tight ball game. Here's the thing. Maryland, we're getting Maryland close to the end in game 11. Because of that, we know that Maryland has a tendency to not stay healthy. So when you play Maryland in September, we even, it's a meme, September Maryland, right? They just beat teams that you didn't think that they were going to be able to beat. But Maryland in late November or mid-November can be a little bit easier. Although Ohio State struggled against Maryland, Talia Tagovailoa, until he got injured in that game, played the game of his life. He was incredibly good. There's one extenuating circumstance with Maryland, and it's somebody named Josh Gaddis. So for those of you who don't remember Josh Gaddis, he used to be the OC for Michigan, and kind of got demoted to wide receiver / they kind of went to the Stanford playbook in 2021, Harbaugh's playbook, and then he goes to Miami, decides to make Tyler Van Dyke, literally spin around and hand the ball, do the option with his back turned. taking way too long to develop plays, running 180-pound running backs up the teeth of Texas A&M and other big teams' defenses. I'm sorry, but you can't treat everything like it's Hassan Haskins running it up, because you don't have the Joe Moore award-winning O-line at Miami. My point in saying all of this is that now he's at Maryland, and his old buddy, that they feuded, about who was calling the plays, Loxley or Gaddis, at Alabama, and now for some reason, I guess he's just they patched it up and he's now the offensive coordinator. But let's be honest, that's Loxley's offense. Gaddis is basically relegated to he's coaching the QBs, which means he's coaching Talia, and that could be problematic because I have not been convinced of his ability to be a competent offensive mind and offensive coach. So because of that, I do think Maryland will still have a lot of talent, and therefore I have to put it as a trap game. The other two aren't trap games because they're good teams, right? Penn State and Ohio State. Those are the matchups that I think most people have circled as these are the toughest matchups for Michigan. So for those reasons, for trap games, I put Maryland number 1, Minnesota number 2.
Oh boy.
So I guess now it's Mike's turn to do the trap games for Ohio State. I feel like there are more trap games for Ohio State than Michigan is, because Michigan, it's like John said, it's Penn State and it's Ohio State, and then a couple other teams maybe could be a little tricky for Ohio State. Who you got as the trap games?
So I'm going to start with this. All right, you're half right for Michigan, I think, because for Michigan, I think it's Purdue and it's Maryland because it's right before the big games. So that's usually about when it's like, bring the level down, because we should have beat the ever-loving crap out of Maryland in 2018 with Dwayne Haskins, but due to his heroics, we barely won.
It will help out Michigan, though, that they don't have Rondell Moore at Purdue.
Yes, guys, I know it's Purdue, and Purdue is crap this year, but for whatever reason, they tend to show up for the big ones, which is why, in my opinion, the big ones for Ohio State could, as follows, potentially be Western Kentucky, because it's right before Notre Dame. I don't think it will be, but it's potential, depending on how everything is going on the offensive side of the ball. Purdue, because it's right before Penn State. Wisconsin, because Ohio State beat Penn State in 2017, and it was a heck of a game. And then they come back the following week and get absolutely destroyed, ripping my guts out by the Iowa Hawkeyes. So Wisconsin, and then Minnesota could be a trap game because I absolutely love PJ Fleck, but I'm sorry, I'm going to be cheering to just Ohio State just punch your face in.
I have to address Purdue. I
think
can't
there's a bigger trap
go.
game in the state of Indiana for Ohio State.
I mean,
week 1.
I mean, and that, by the way, that's a barometer on McCord and how that team is gelling on the level of defeat of Indiana. Because if it's close by like a touchdown or two versus if you guys just get whooped, that's going to determine. But I need to talk about Purdue for a minute. So if you guys have ever seen, there's a show on HGTV. It's called Fixer Upper. And, a lot of times on that show, they take this, the house, they bring it to the studs and they start all over again. And then there's a lot of shiplap and all kinds of things on there. Purdue is Fixer Upper on steroids. They lost everybody. They lost the head coach an offensive play caller. They lost their quarterback. They lost their best wide receiver talent. They lost everything but the kitchen sink. Purdue is lost. Now, I actually think that Ryan Walters has done a lot of good in the recruiting game. Thanks, Mike. Yes, because I watched these voluntarily. No, I got dragged along for the ride.
I don't think I've ever watched HGTV in my life.
Yes. Oh, I had to watch quite a bit in my we won't go into it. But my point in saying that is Purdue is going to be a 4-8 football team, and that's my prediction for 4-8. Property Brothers I enjoyed actually. So 4-8. So without all of these pieces, I honestly just don't see Purdue coming into the Big House, which is one of the toughest places to play in college football. The noise of 100,000 football fans is just, if you aren't on your calls, and this is, I get that Hudson Card is he's an experienced quarterback. He'll probably be able to manage it okay. But you're just replacing everybody. Yeah. I wish I was married. I'm not, but I did have a long-term person who that's why I had to watch a lot of that. So
what's funny to me is that Purdue, despite all that they've lost, I'm seeing a lot of people, and Grant in the West, last year the West, I get that, but I still see a lot of people that think Purdue is going to have a better season than Indiana, despite the fact that Purdue lost so much. That's really interesting. For sure. But I think Indiana's gonna be a little bit tougher for Michigan and Ohio State than Purdue. I think Indiana will be a little tougher. But I mean, that's just my 2 cents. Not a lot, but just a little bit there.
I think you might be right. Listen, Purdue is going to have a rough year. Mm-hmm. They're cruising for a bruise. They just are. So I don't know.
I mean, the only other thing would be that Indiana is close because it's the first game of the year, and then we go to Purdue and we just mollywop them. I mean, I see Purdue because Purdue, when the big teddy bear boys like to come into town, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, for whatever reason, they could suck complete and utter doo-doo. But the crowd shows up, the fans show up, they show out, they're loud. You talk about a home environment. Purdue is known when it comes to the big games to have a home environment that is hard to play with.
That Penn State game was great last year. Fantastic. Even though they lost. I actually picked them to win that game, and they lost. I thought that they would get the upset there. But, yeah, you're right. I mean, Indiana's not going to be fantastic next year. I just feel like, Indiana overall has, a little bit more upside going their way than Purdue. I think they'll actually, cause a little bit, some trouble. I mean, 2-10. I mean, yeah, okay. I
don't know. It's in Bloomington. The last time we played there, it was mid-season. Ended up being 54-7. Probably should have been a lot higher than that. But I think there's enough there.
Yeah, Penix was out. Yeah,
Penix was out. We took Tuttle out the game. We literally took his head off.
That was bad. hey, you got Jack Tuttle now, John. So.
Hey, yeah. Who apparently winning the backup job.
Hey, being a backup at Michigan is better than getting destroyed at Indiana, I guess. I mean, that's okay.
And I will point out there's a difference between giving people a tougher battle and the final prediction score. So, like, I actually think that Indiana, a lot of people are saying 2-10. That is my official Indiana prediction is 2-10. But I think that they could play some of these teams closer than Purdue because Purdue has some really gimme games on their schedule.
It's like, for example, I mean, I've seen like the other night, I was talking on the Voice of College Football. Like, some people said that Louisville could be a dark horse, really good team, like top 25 team. Maybe if they go 11-1, they'll have a shot at the playoff. It's because Louisville's schedule is a lot easier. That's why the record, you are what your record says you are, is not accurate. I mean, Indiana could be a better football team than a lot of 6-6 teams in other conferences, being 3-9. They're in the Big Ten, playing a top 10 tough schedule, and it's based on how competitive they are. I mean, Indiana back in 2017, 2018 went 5-7 2 years in a row, and I mean, they were really competitive. I mean, that Michigan game in 2018 was fantastic. Michigan won. It was a really great game. Peyton Ramsey was solid, a very underrated player. But yeah, I mean, again, no one cares about Indiana here. It's just, I think Indiana will provide some tough challenges for Michigan, Ohio State. Hopefully they're good games. You want more competitive games. Even if at the end of the day, Michigan, Ohio State do win, by like 21, you want it to be close.
Well, didn't Indiana? It was like 10-10 until in the last game against Michigan, the first half. So you guys
contended. Got destroyed in the second half,
and then but it's you at least got the first half to be like, okay, we're keeping it tough against Michigan.
Kept the ratings high on Fox for a little bit longer.
keep it high. Yep.
So I guess is there any more thoughts on trap games before I guess that we're basically about done?
I don't think so.
So we're good. So it was a fantastic show. You guys both did a great job. Nobody was getting upset at each other. We're all having a great time. See, Michigan and Ohio State fans can talk about their teams without getting mad. This is living proof. And even talking about Indiana, Rutgers, and other teams that struggle a lot. It's okay. It's all in good fun. College football is the best. So it was definitely, thanks everyone for being here. This was a great show. It was awesome. Thanks, guys, for having me on as well to moderate this episode 1. It was great, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Real quick, just want to remind everybody, so you guys can find me, DM me on Twitter at John Diadamo, JOHNDADAMO. I host Michigan Wolverines Live every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Tomorrow, Mark Rogers is joining me. So we'll have a great show, I'm sure, on the Michigan Wolverines Live. And then Big Ten every Monday. For the most part, we rotate a bit. But usually I'm hosting the 8 p.m. Eastern block, which we call the Ocho. And we usually do a panel discussion. And it's a lot of fun. I'll also be on the post-game live show upcoming Saturdays, along with Dre, who will be the primary host of that one. So lots going on this season. Just want to remind everybody to check those things out.
Yeah, I guess for me, just real quick, I mean, if you want to find me, I'm at Only Talk Sports on Twitter, and my YouTube channel is Only Talk Sports. That's very easy to remember, both the same. So I'm talk all kinds of sports, so you can check me out there if you want to. But definitely check out John, because he's fantastic, and the guy on the top left, Buckeye Mike.
Yeah, so you can find me here at Buckeye Mike on the channel. You can find me on Twitter. Elon Musk, you can buzz off. I'm not calling it X. Screw you. At Tyler Leedy 4. You can find my articles. We're up to article number 3 over at the Shady Sports Network website, shadysportsnetwork.com, I believe. And subscribe to Buckeye Mike, because we're trying to hit 150 before the college football season starts. And subscribe to Shady Sports Network YouTube, because they are trying to hit 1,000 before the NFL season starts. So subscribe all around if you don't already.
Subscribe to all of the things, people. Just do it.
Thanks again for everyone showing up in the chat. Thank you, John, for agreeing to do this. Thank you, Jeffrey, for one of the most likely few times that you'll be on.
We're gonna have all kinds of folks moderating this.
Yeah,
we'll be.
I'm not saying I'll never be back. It's a lot. It's college football.
It gets crazy.
Season. It's a busy season, so
yeah.
Jeffrey, I know that it's busy.
I know.
Like, I haven't even been talking as much sports. Like, this has actually been great, because I'm talking about it again, because I mean, it's been summer. Just I need a break. This is kind of a dead period, even though there's barely a dead period in sports anymore.
But so thank you everyone for tuning in. I think, John, didn't you say it'd be 2 weeks before we do the next one because you got
I got it. Yeah, I'm out all next week on a conference, so I'm not going to be on any of the shows. And then we'll be doing this every week, starting 2 weeks from now, 2 Tuesdays from now, so that we can hit every basically get scheduled like kind of game previews of the games that both of us have against the mighty East Carolina Pirates and Indiana Hoosiers. But of course, I've got to wrap my piece up here with a Go Blue. And thanks to the Wolverines who joined us in chat, too.
Go Bucks.
I'm a game changer. I'm a game changer.